Good afternoon. 4:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, we're going to be joined by Abby Johnson at 5 o'clock as, the Biden administration is just arresting pro-life people and then throwing away the key. And then Buzz Patterson joins us at 5:30, retired lieutenant colonel pilot in the U.S. Air Force. And we'll see if we can't track down that missing F-35 jet. Can you imagine? What if we found it during the show? Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be the scoop of the century. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The illegals are coming. The illegals are coming. We have so many illegal immigrants pouring into our country through both of our borders and overstaying visas. It's so out of control that Democrat mayors are doing press conferences, and you've got Democrat lawmakers trying to quiet down their own constituents. Stop noticing this so much. It's really wild what's happening and unfortunate for our country. Over the weekend, Fox News and their reporters revealing that a train full of illegal immigrants is now headed to the United States border. Take a listen to some of this audio. So what you're hearing is thousands of migrants, illegal migrants, all inside of container cars, just like overflowing this train headed to our border. That is not, it's a Ferromex train is the name of the train. This is not the caravan of yesteryear. This is something else entirely. Now we have trains directly into the country. It's quite the image. Let's bring in Mark Krikorian now. He's the executive director for the Center for Immigration Studies. Mark, good afternoon to you, sir.
Likewise. Glad to be here.
So at this point, I think we can safely say Mexico's not doing anything to help us at all, right?
Not much. Sure doesn't look that way. And frankly, why would they comply with things that we ask them? They're not afraid of the president. I mean, the president's kind of a laughingstock around the world. They know they've got nothing to fear. So, they're going to pursue their own interests. Look, they have a country. They have their interests, and their interests are, if illegal immigrants get into their country, for them to keep going and not stay in Mexico. So, why would they do anything to stop this? And, under President Trump, he obviously got a lot more cooperation from Mexico because they took him more seriously. But it wasn't just that. It's that Trump, under the Trump administration, we were actually trying to stop illegal immigration. And so when we insisted that Mexico help us, we were saying, look, let's work together to the same goal. Whereas now, what we're telling Mexico, if we're talking to them at all, is please do our border enforcement for us because we're unwilling to enforce our own borders. So we're putting it on you. We're dumping it on you. This is really what we're seeing with Biden is kind of like this, Mexico will pay for the wall idea, that it's their problem, except that it's the Biden administration that's doing it. Under Trump, we actually were enforcing the law, and so we were on firmer ground to ask the Mexicans to help us out.
Yes, when we also threatened them with a trade war, and they responded by locking down their southern border.
But that's my point, is that we were trying to stop illegal immigration into the United States.
Right.
And so when it's sort of carrot and stick, you know what I mean? And right now, what the Biden administration is doing is saying, look, we refuse to enforce our own borders, so we're expecting you to do it. It really takes a certain amount of gall.
Yes, it certainly does. In fact, the Mexicans just laugh at all of this. Their president, AMLO, is constantly encouraging Mexican descendants in the United States to vote for Democrats in order to sustain the status quo here. Donald Trump likes to say they're laughing at us. That's definitely happening in Mexico.
Oh, for sure. And look, this isn't just a Democrat thing. I mean, under President George W. Bush, he worked hand in glove with the Mexican government and kind of conceded the Mexican government's authority over Mexicans in the United States. It was unbelievable. And,
It's crazy.
the Mexicans aren't going to respect that. They understand national sovereignty. They, in fact, have a sort of, chip on their shoulder about that issue. And if we respect them, if we respect ourselves, we're going to get them to respect us. I had a boss once who told me, you teach people how to treat you. The Biden administration is teaching not just Mexico, but, Iran, China, and everybody else how to treat us because he's a weak and kind of laughable figure.
What do you make of the flirtations that people like Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump have had? They've been talking a little bit more openly about this. The use of lethal force or some sort of much more aggressive posture on our border to stop the flow of especially all of this fentanyl pouring into the country and killing hundreds of thousands of Americans.
Well, there's two things. I mean, first, the idea that we're going to be, going into Mexico and killing people, I don't know, that's not going to end well. The Mexicans aren't going to take kindly to that sort of thing. And you know what? We don't even have to do that. That's my whole concern with the support for military responses to what we're seeing at the border. That would be arguably necessary if we had tried everything else and the normal law enforcement didn't work. Then we'd have to resort to more serious measures.
Right.
I'd be open to that.
Right.
But this administration isn't even letting the Border Patrol do its normal job.
Yes.
So, of course, that's what's going to happen.
But maybe, I don't know, maybe this is foolish on my part, but what is the Mexican government going to do about it? If we have targeted strikes on cartel leaders, the Mexicans are going to what, declare war on us? That's not going to happen.
I don't know. I mean, it depends, how overt it is. I'm open to the idea of, using force, you blow up somebody's drug labs or kill but, it's the kind of thing where diplomacy is necessary, where it's like, well, we don't know who did that. The Israelis do that kind of thing all the time. They still haven't acknowledged that they're the ones who put that, was a computer virus, remember, in the Iranian nuclear plant?
Was it the Stuxnet virus?
Right. I think that's what it was. And they still haven't acknowledged it, and that's fine. That's the way policy goes. But how about we just first let the Border Patrol do its frickin' job?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
Right now, there are whole stretches of the border that nobody's even watching because the Border Patrol guys are stripped off the border to go and, buy diapers at Walmart for all of the people who are pouring over the border.
That's for sure.
Responding to Biden's invitation.
Let me play some audio. This is Bill Malugin at Fox News, one of the few reporters in the country. We talk to all of them. We like the few that report on this subject, we talk to them. Here's Bill Malugin from Mission, Texas.
I can tell you that early this morning in Eagle Pass, we witnessed one of the largest mass illegal crossings we have ever seen in the last 2.5 years of covering our southern border. We'll get right to this video. Take a look at this stunning footage. Border Patrol sources telling us just after midnight, about 2,500 migrants crossed illegally into Eagle Pass. You can see this lengthy line of them stretching from shore to shore in the river. This video perspective coming from the Mexican side of the river in Piedras Negras. One of our contacts over there shooting this video as they essentially bum rushed Eagle Pass last night.
So how can you even pretend that we have a border if 2,500 people can come over in a single day in one spot?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. And look, the Biden administration is saying, well, wow, this is all just happening to us. There's nothing we can do. It's because of, climate change or what have you. Well, these people are simply responding to incentives. And you can build all the walls you want, even if these guys were, willing to enforce the, finish and enforce the walls. If once somebody gets past that, they're let go, which is what happens to most of these people. They're going to keep trying to come in. You have to stop, catch, and release. And, it's going to be harder to stop now that Biden has created this flow of people, but it can be done. They just are unwilling to do what's necessary to stop it because this administration doesn't really believe that they have the right to stop illegal immigration. Okay. The American people have the right to stop it.
Sure. Okay. So, but despite that, don't they have legal obligations here? So fundamentally, of all of the betrayals of the Biden administration towards the American people that would justify the impeachment and removal of a president of the United States. I have to believe this is a target-rich environment. Failing the country this badly on our sovereignty, and by extension leading to an immense growth in human trafficking, the enrichment of the cartels, and the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans, all of that to me adds up to a perfect justification for why we should remove Biden from office. Are they, I mean, in your assessment here, I mean, I imagine they've got to be breaking endless laws in the way that they're administering our border policies, if you can call them that.
Sure they are. The Homeland Security Committee, the Republican staff there in the House of Representatives, has issued a couple of reports, and they have this whole series of reports and hearings coming, laying out chapter and verse what this administration has done and how they violated the law at the border. But, you know, I think the real problem, if you want to identify it, is they only have a 4-vote majority in the House of Representatives, and you can't bring impeachment proceedings if you're not going to win. Yeah, at least in the House. But and that's why even before Biden, they should have impeached Mayorkas.
For sure, I totally agree. And McCarthy's threats apparently were very empty, or at least he can't get the votes to support him because he made that announcement last year: either resign or we'll consider impeaching you. And they've been doing a lot of considering, but not a lot of impeaching. And I know. And this is where we are now. But so you mentioned Republicans having only their 4-vote majority, but have you been intrigued by all of the Democrats who've been speaking up lately, mostly city officials, and then a couple of congressmen? They'll show up and they'll pretend like they care, and really what they want is more money and more amnesty. But, you know, what do you make of this, some of this infighting on the left now on this issue?
Well, it's because they're facing the consequences of their policies. You know, they used to say in the 60s, conservative was a liberal who got mugged by reality. Well, they're getting mugged by reality. The problem is that, like you said, they're really just calling for more federal money. I'll believe that they're serious, that, say, Mayor Eric Adams of New York City, who's been probably the most outspoken, I'll believe he's serious when he repeals his city's sanctuary laws.
Yes.
That won't immediately fix everything, but that clearly will be a sign that they have realized that they're in the wrong. Until then, it's all just hot air in order to protect their, behinds politically.
Right. And on that front, Mark Krikorian, is the Biden administration, I assume one of the obligations of ICE is to file detainer requests to local authorities when they take into custody an illegal immigrant. And is ICE still doing that? And if they are these sanctuary city policies preventing these cops from working with ICE?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, ICE is still doing it, although I guarantee you it's less often than before because, this administration's priorities for which illegals they're even willing to deport are limit the universe of people. But the whole point of a sanctuary city is that they don't honor detainer requests from ICE. In other words, they won't hold on to someone that they arrested for some other reason, regular law enforcement, they're selling drugs, beating up a girlfriend, whatever it is. And then they pop up on ICE's computer when their fingerprints are scanned. What a sanctuary city means is they don't hold on to that person and they just let them go regardless. So absolutely, it makes it more difficult both to do policing, because having somebody take this criminal off your hands and removing him from your community is obviously a benefit, also makes it hard for ICE to do its job. Like I said, I'll believe that Democrats have seen the light when they start repealing their sanctuary policy.
That's for sure. Yeah, I'll look for that too. Mark Krikorian over at the Center for Immigration Studies. Thank you as always, sir. Great to talk to you today. Yeah, another big news item this week, Volodymyr Zelensky from Ukraine set to arrive this week and ask for more money from the United States. And of course, Congress will give it to him without hesitation, with no strings attached. That, we just keep seeing this thing over and over and over again. Zelensky's going to come here this week, meet with lawmakers and Joe Biden. But have you seen the guy who represents Zelensky as a spokesman? He's been saying lately, it's a man who pretends to be a woman. He's dressed. He looks like Jimmy Fallon has a character that looks like this, where he pretends to be a woman called Sarah, and he's like the ugliest woman you've ever seen. It's just like ridiculous. Yeah, he looks like a Jimmy Fallon character, quite honestly. And he released a video this past week. He's American. He's wearing like a Ukrainian outfit, like he's like a military person. And he said that anybody who spreads Russian propaganda, we will hunt you around the world and come after you. And that led to people like J.D. Vance, the senator from Ohio, to be like, what is wrong with this person? They're going to hunt people down around the planet? And he released a subsequent video, again, in what looks like a Ukrainian military uniform, Ukraine flag behind him. And here's what it sounds like.
This is Sergeant Sarah Ashton Cirillo of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And I'd like to thank the X social media platform for carrying this exclusive message from Kyiv. There has been much discussion recently related to my role within the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
And he's kind of doughy, he's fat, he's got big fake boobs on, and it's like a goofy hair, like wig. It's like ridiculous.
Ukraine. Before answering some of the questions put forward by Senator Vance of Ohio, I'd like to thank all those in the U.S. who are supporting the Ukrainian people.
And you know, what does it say about us? I'm not talking about you and me. I'm saying, what does it say about our country's leadership that Zelensky thinks that putting an American dude who pretends to be a woman in the position of his top English-speaking spokesman, what does that say about us? That's what's going to get us to open our checkbooks? This guy? And you know what's amazing about him? In addition to everything else, he's supposed to be an expert in disinformation. That's his job. He is not only a spokesman for the Ukrainian army, he is a disinformation analyst. That makes perfect sense. That a disinformation analyst would be a dude pretending to be a woman. That guy knows disinformation. It's like, you know, when corporations hire hackers to teach people cybersecurity. This guy used to be a hacker. Now he's reformed. He now teaches you how to handle your emails responsibly. Yeah, this guy pretends to be a woman. He knows disinformation. He sees it in the mirror every morning. Good afternoon to you. 4:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Abby Johnson set to join us. She's a former Planned Parenthood employee. She's now a pro-life activist. We'll get into President Trump's interview on Meet the Press this weekend, some conversation on abortion there. The media is leaving a lot out, by the way, from that conversation. We'll share the full context with you. And also, she'll join us to discuss the Biden administration's arrest and prosecution and locking up of their political opponents who try and stand up for life. And then Buzz Patterson will be here at 5:30. We'll talk to him. He's a U.S. Air Force pilot, now retired. We're going to chat with him about what it takes to find a missing F-35 jet, because it just so happens that's the situation we have right now. We're missing an F-35. Somehow, an $80 million piece of hardware has gone missing on the back of milk cartons everywhere. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. More on this story, though, of these grandmothers that the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia has just successfully prosecuted and convicted. 74-year-old Joan Bell and 73-year-old Jean Marshall are set to serve upwards of 11 years in prison for protesting outside of an abortion mill in Washington, D.C. For more on this, I have a bit of a surprise guest for you, but we wanted to get his perspective, and I'm glad he came through. Mark Houck is joining us now. He is a pro-life activist, and he was arrested by the Biden administration, but then he was acquitted because he was just a dad standing up for his kid outside of one of these abortion mills. Now he's running for Congress as well in Pennsylvania. We'll get into that too. Mark, good to have you with us, sir. Is Mark there? Can you hear me? Mark Houck. All right, let's see if this signal's working. I'm hoping he perhaps just walked away from his phone for a moment. Oh, he did drop the call? Okay, we're going to try him back right now. So we're going to get Mark Houck on here. And you remember Mark Houck's saga where you've got an FBI SWAT team shows up to his house. Everybody's all kitted up. They've got the guns out. And they arrest this guy. And he didn't do anything wrong. Even the crazy Philadelphia prosecutor was it Larry Krasner? He turned down prosecuting Mark Houck because they didn't have any evidence against him. He didn't do anything wrong. Some crazy guy got in his kid's face and he shoved the guy back. He stood up for his kid, which, up until last year, you were allowed to do that in America. But no, not anymore. And so what did the Biden administration do? They turned that into an effort to destroy Mark Houck and make a public spectacle of him. Luckily, he prevailed in court, and luckily, he's back with us now. Mark, good afternoon, sir.
Hey, good afternoon.
Mark, thank you for doing this. I wonder what your reaction is to this news. We see now 3 pro-life activists were a part of protesting outside of an abortion mill in Washington, D.C. last October, and they were just prosecuted by the Biden administration, U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves in the District of Columbia. And now they are looking at upwards of 11 years in prison each, including 2 grandmothers, a 74-year-old named Joan Bell and a 73-year-old named Jean Marshall. What's happening here, do you think?
Well, sure. Look, I've known Joan for years, and Joan is a warrior, and she's no stranger to being persecuted for the pro-life cause, and I've done great work with her. So I don't think she's surprised. What we're dealing with here is bad law with this FACE Act, Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, which was established in 1994, and it has no application to pro-lifers on the sidewalk. They tried to use it against me,
right?
And of course, it was not successful. But as far as the terms of what happened with Joan and the other people, we could talk about that. But it's definitely bad law, and it's not something that everyday citizens are going to positively benefit from. Because basically, in my trial, the judge said it's being spread way too thin. And its original intent was not what the application of it is today. And so the judge even chastised the DOJ and said, go back to D.C. and fix this law. So we need to repeal the FACE Act. And sadly, though, until that happens, we're going to have more persecutions like this.
It's amazing. And meanwhile, U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves in D.C., last year he turned down prosecutions for 77% of all arrests. So that includes just local street crimes, just not prosecuting them at all. And here he is trying to destroy the lives of elderly women. Why is that?
Well, look, no one is immune, and age is not even a factor here. I mean, we've had the gentleman raided in Utah who was 74 years of age, shot dead on his doorstep by the FBI. It doesn't matter if you speak out against the state. If you're a pro-lifer, if you're a devout Christian, or any person of faith, you're an enemy and target of the state. I've been saying this all along, and certainly age has no barrier here.
So how has your perspective changed over these last 2-3 years with regards to our justice system, if at all? Did you always think that it was 2 tiers of justice, or did your views on this change in your experience?
Well, look, during the Trump administration, we had no concern of this. No, it was unthinkable. In fact, it's been unthinkable in most of our time and my time in this world. But with the Biden administration, it's a whole other ballgame. And as you said, 2-tiered system of justice. He's basically declared that he's going to come after pro-lifers, those that stand against his administration's policy. And so, the last 2 years has just told me that, what I thought would happen is coming to fruition, which is basically, that being an activist and being someone who stands for traditional family values and pro-life is going to make you a target. And certainly, what I believe would happen has certainly come true for me. So we need to stand up and be counted for. We must be willing to sacrifice. We must be first-century Christians in the 21st century.
Yeah, and you're bearing your cross here by standing up for what's right. Mark, you have decided to run for Congress now. The district is Pennsylvania's first. You are in a primary against the current incumbent Republican, Brian Fitzpatrick. Tell us why you decided to jump into this race.
Sure. Well, it was much prayer for sure, and it wasn't something I initially wanted to do, but many people have encouraged me to do it. And after hearing all that as requests, I recognize that, perhaps for such a time as this, I have been called, and the Republic is falling apart. And so we need to do our part. We have a duty to do our part as American citizens. And I made a decision at the end of July that we would go to this race and fight for the first district of Pennsylvania, and that we would be willing to sacrifice whatever we need to sacrifice to go to Capitol Hill and bring integrity back to our nation's capital, and bring traditional family values, American values, back to the Congress. And frankly, it's something that we feel called to do, as I said. And I want to protect people from what happened to me. And so the current administration cannot run from my narrative. I think when President Biden heard that I was running, he spit out his coffee. So, they're not happy about it, but we have to do it, and everyone else has to do it that wants to save this republic.
Your opponent, Brian Fitzpatrick, has been in the news lately as someone who says he doesn't really want to get into the impeachment of Joe Biden. He said he's according to NBC, he doesn't want to rush into impeachment. Have you seen enough, do you think, that to justify an impeachment inquiry or an impeachment vote in your view?
Well, you got to know this about Congressman Fitzpatrick, who I voted for the last 3 terms. He's the only congressman that was a former FBI agent, and he spent his time before he took this seat back after his brother passed away. He spent his time in Ukraine. And so Brian has firsthand knowledge of what was going on in Ukraine back in 2015 and prior to. So he has some inside information. I don't know what that is, but I know that's where he spent most of his time. And he's on the committee for that proxy war at this point. So I can see why he would say that. He votes like a Democrat. That's one of the reasons why we're running. So I would certainly not be someone who would be opposed to the impeachment process.
Yeah, I mean, because look at what you experienced. I mean, like that alone strikes me as a good justification for why Joe Biden should not be wielding all of this power over the country.
Surely. Oh, no doubt. Look, time has come, and it's time for people to recognize that they have a role. And if you're not going to speak up, if you're not going to do anything about it, then don't complain. And I can't look my children in the eye every day and complain about the republic if I'm not going to do something about it. So we have this opportunity, and every American citizen has an opportunity come election, primary coming up in April for us here in PA, and of course this upcoming general election, to change all these things.
Yep.
And so I think there'll be a lot of change this coming cycle.
Do you and this is like an impossible question to answer in any other way, but I'm going to try my best. Do you think you'll win this race? I mean, I know what the answer is. Yes, everyone says yes.
Sure.
But what is the answer in your view?
Look, I'm not a politician, right? I don't follow politics. I never did. Of course, I'm a pro-lifer. I'm a zealot when it comes to my faith, and I'm a ministry guy. That's what I do. Sure. But so to be able to to position this where I know exactly what's going to happen, I didn't even think I'd be running. So, and the government has a 98% conviction rate when they come after you. So the odds don't scare me. I mean, I had a 2% chance of being acquitted, and certainly we were. And so, Brian has successfully fended off a lot of challengers in the past, and he beat them significantly. So the pundits would say, like, you got no chance. But the reality is I'm an anomaly. My story is an anomaly, and I'm a name. I'm in Governor DeSantis's latest campaign ad. My face, my voice, and my message.
Yes.
So Brian's never faced anybody in the first district who's got that kind of attention. So I think our chances are great. I'd like to say that we're going to win. But you know what? I don't know. Look, I really don't know. But I wouldn't be in it if we didn't think we could win it.
Amen. Well, I respect that answer a great deal. Mark Houck, thank you very much. Really appreciate you joining us, and best of luck during this campaign, sir.
All right. God bless. Take care.
God bless you. I'm glad he could join us on late notice here to talk about this, because he was a man who experienced it firsthand. And think about those odds. 98% conviction rate, and he was among the 2% that gets acquitted. And so these federal prosecutors, man, they have a lot of discretion over whose lives they destroy and whose they don't. And have you noticed how the Biden administration's been using it? It's been to target their political opponents on a nonstop, constant, aggressive basis. And it's meant to send a message, not just to the people they prosecute and convict and lock up, but to everybody else. You're going to find yourself in league with a criminal? Stand up for life? Stand up for your country? Question the integrity of our elections? Your life will be destroyed, or the lives of people you know and love will be destroyed. That's how they've been wielding this power. You know, I wanted to play some audio for you from Donald Trump's interview. President Trump was on Meet the Press this weekend with Kristen Welker. She's the new host of that show. Chuck Todd fired from the show. Kristen Welker takes over. I'm sorry, did NBC have a different statement about that? But we know what happens. It's not like Chuck Todd was like, you know what I want to do? I want to stop hosting Meet the Press. Like, no, that's not how it works. They fired him, and then they dressed it up some other way. So they put Kristen Welker in there. And she had a number of questions here for Donald Trump. This was, I have to say, I don't know what the actual television broadcast looked like because I did not watch that. My understanding is that they interrupted it a bunch. Did you see this at all, Corey? They interrupted it for fact checks or something. They were doing like interruptions during the actual interview to tell you what to really think about this moment rather than, you know, treat Americans as adults and let them see a conversation between two adults. No, we've got to filter this thing. But on the internet, they posted the full thing without any of this nonsense. It was just Kristen Welker and Donald Trump. And it's about an hour and a half long. I watched the whole thing. And, you know, Trump, for the most part, Trump's answers were great. They were perfectly fine. And Trump would start going down a road that Kristen Welker was uncomfortable with. Like, you can't talk about that. You can't say that. Everybody says what you're saying is a lie. And there's no evidence of that. And she would make these, like, blanket statements that weren't true, actually. She didn't employ any of the nuance that any rational person would. She didn't cede any territory that anybody who was dealing strictly in facts would. It was just a hatchet job. It was ridiculous. I don't even know why Trump sits down. Look, I've said it in the past that he should sit down with them, with the lefty news outlets, just to demonstrate how foolish they are. So I guess in that way, he is doing that. But he was really nice to her. He was almost too nice to her for most of the interview. He finally started turning on her towards the end. Like, he kept saying, you're off to a bad start. This is like an hour into the interview. I'm like, Mr. President, it's not really a start. It's like she's been doing this for an hour. No, you're off to a bad start, he would say. But here's an example. Here's one of the exchanges between the two of them. This one's on Hunter Biden.
We learned just a short time ago that the president's son, Hunter Biden, was indicted by a federal grand jury on 3 gun charges. Given that, Mr. President, can you continue to say that there are 2 systems of justice?
It's like Eric Swalwell wrote that question. Like, what is that a real question from a real reporter? How could you say there are 2 systems of justice when Hunter Biden's been charged with the most meaningless of the crimes that he's committed?
Well, I think there's no question about it. He had a plea deal that was the deal of the century, the art of the deal. You could write a book on it, the art of the deal.
Who did that?
And all of a sudden that was broken up by a judge who was able to, a brilliant judge actually, who was able to see through what was happening.
Mary Ellen Noreika.
And it's a sad situation. I mean, nobody should be happy about this. I'm not happy about it. Nobody is. It's a very sad thing. It's so bad for our country.
So bad for our country. He's totally right.
But you talked about the plea deal, but now Hunter Biden's been indicted. He's facing very serious charges.
Ignore the plea deal part. Let's just talk about the indictment of just the gun stuff.
Doesn't that undercut your entire argument that there are 2 systems of justice?
Oh, my God.
Well, look, it's one of 12 charges. There are 12 possible charges.
And he's still under
investigation. This is the only charge that doesn't affect his father.
Well, he's still under
I
investigation.
don't know where he came up with 12. I'm not sure who told him that. But somebody, I guess, had said there are 12 possible charges. Some legal expert must have said that. But, boy, it seems like a lot more than that. If Trump can get hit with 6,000 charges for mishandling paperwork, you'd think Hunter Biden, for selling out the country to enrich his family, would violate a lot more than 12 laws.
Investigation.
Well, sure, maybe. I mean, let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. Kristen Welker rolls out there's no evidence Biden did anything wrong. That's coming up. I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to rebut it. Donald Trump rebuts it. It's all very excellent. It's coming up. 4:50.
Well, of course, there's no evidence that the president has any link to his son's business dealings. Let me ask you, though,
I don't
second.
necessarily agree. He called in. You mean he called in all these meetings? He was calling in on the meetings. He was put on speakerphone, and every single day, and
the witness
literally
testified.
many calls. And what about the fact that he got rid of the prosecutor for $1 billion?
Well, the witness who testified.
You don't get rid of this prosecutor. We're not giving you $1 billion to Ukraine. He said that. I mean, there are a lot of things here.
Mr. President, the witness who testified, though, said that he never heard any discussion of business when President Biden was put on the
phone.
phone.
Wait a minute. You saw the prosecutor thing on television, because I saw it on your network. He said, you don't get rid of this prosecutor, I'm not giving $1 billion.
That was looked into as well. And as you know, there was never any wrongdoing.
If I ever said that, quid pro quo.
Let's move on to what a second Trump term would look like.
I don't want to talk about this anymore. What an amazing piece of audio. Just slobbering all over Biden, just sucking up to him, and like constantly running cover for him, just deeply credulous. Biden's fine. Everybody says he's fine. Everyone I know thinks he's fine. It's a fine. Why are you... Let's move on. Let's move on to what a second term for Trump would look like. No, let's not move on. And Trump's sitting there, by the way, throughout this interview, is like, I got all the time in the world. I think she ended the interview. She tapped out after an hour and a half. He said, no, keep going. I can answer these questions forever. There's no time constraints right now. It's just you and me, baby. And she's like, no, I don't want to talk about Biden's sins anymore. I'm done. Coming up, we're going to talk about one of his answers, at least, on the issue of abortion that has a lot of people on the right popping eyebrows this morning. Abby Johnson joins us just moments away.